Hi, before we begin this week's material, I want to really quickly recap last week's reading and points that I did not lecture on. Namely, I want to talk about the two most influential people on Darwin and his development of the theory of evolution. One is Charles Lyell. Charles Lyell, not only a mentor to Darwin, poses the ideas through principles of geology that the surface of the earth is not only ancient, but has been constantly changing. The next person that probably had the most influence on Darwin was Thomas Malthus. Now, Thomas Malthus, through the Malthusian equation, basically puts forward an idea of supply and demand. He states that a population's size, numbers, are limited to the amount of resources available to that population, meaning that a population's numbers will never surpass the amount of resources that are going to be available to that population. Now, in your book, it does state what Darwin takes from Malthus, and this is really important in his developing of the theory of evolution. So let's look at this real quick and review it. So Darwin uses from Malthus that population numbers can never surpass the amount of resources available to them. But as he's making his observations, he recognizes that organisms, pair of parents, produce multiple offspring. And if this keeps going, that means the population's numbers should explode. But this does not happen. There's no change in organisms' populations over time, and no increase occurs. So, if a population is limited by its food supply, and looking at the numbers of offspring, population numbers should expand, what's going on? Well, he notices something else, that there's competition for these food resources, not only between species, but within a species. And within every species, tiny little changes, tiny little differences in their physical attributes between siblings allow some to have an advantage and some to have a disadvantage. Those that are at a disadvantage cannot compete for those food resources as well and basically die and are not able to reach reproductive age. Those who are at an advantage because of their physical attributes reach reproductive age and are able to pass these physical attributes along. Now, Darwin hypothesizes that if these physical attributes were to accumulate over a long period of time, they would eventually lead to the rise of a new species. And we'll talk about speciation next week. All right, so now let's go ahead and get into this week's subject matter. What we're going to look at before we come back and talk about how evolution works is look at everything on a cellular level. So let's talk about some cells, some cell reproduction, and how DNA creates you.